Hey, greetings, everyone. It is Thursday, the 13th of July, and this is Content Evolution New World. We're glad to have you with us. We have a guest today, Mark Prensky. Mark, his most recent book is Empowered. Yes, I have a copy of your book. I have read your book, Mark. And he is also the person who coined the terms the digital native and digital immigrant. I think that that's one of the things that you're very well known for. There are, a number of other books that he has written. My count is that you've got about just short of 10 books under your belt, Mark. Is that about right?
Actually 10, yes.
Well, there you go. My eyeball count was good. And glad to have Mike McGuire, our co-host, with us. Mike, good to see you.
Good day, everybody. Hi, everybody. Mark, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So Mark's an advocate for learning as a result of doing something, right? And so doing for Mark comes before learning. And we're going to actually, spend a moment doing with Mark and learning his point of view. All right. So, Mark, we're delighted to have you with us. Where are you joining us from this morning?
Palo Alto, California.
All right. Well, it's a good spot on the planet. Thanks for being with us. And take it away. I know that we tested your screen before, so it should work just fine. Everyone, welcome Mark Prensky.
Okay. Everybody awake, I hope. Thank you. Nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. I'm going to talk about the future of young people. And that's what I think we need to focus on. There are about 2 billion of them in the world. And between 2 and 3 billion, I'm interested in all of them. I'm interested in the young and the old, the rich and the poor, all the kids, the haves, the have-nots in terms of technology. I want to find ways to help them all in this new environment we're in. And so I've stood up this thing called the Global Institute for Empowerment, Accomplishment, and Impact by Young People that we're just starting with. And I'm going to talk about that and ask for your help as we go through the time. So I'm talking today about reframing and recalibrating for a new age. Now, reframing is the or. We either take one frame or another frame. This goes back to the paradigms of Kuhn and all these things. And we all know that you can see either the cup or you can see the profiles. It's very hard to see both at once, which is really important. But the question really is, which is more useful? And so that's where I'm going. And then recalibrating is the and. When we need both of something, we need to think about how much of each we get. And so it's like old versus new. Nothing ever completely goes away. I hear some background noise. I don't know who that's from, but I hope it's not from me. Nothing ever completely goes away, but it's really important what becomes mainstream and what becomes a niche, like Latin became a niche. And my process is really to first reframe things, and I do this in a wide variety of areas, and then recalibrate. Now, I hope you all agree that our goal is to prepare and equip young people for their future. And I want to start by reframing our kids. Is it possible to just show my picture in picture and not all the participants? That's what I see, all the participants. I don't know if that's my own setting. It is my own setting.
It's just your own setting, Mike.
It's my
I
own
think
setting.
that on the recording, we're going to be seeing you in the.
Okay, perfect, because it was blocking the slides. That's okay.
No.
I fixed it. Thank you. Lost a minute and a half. The reframing, preparing our kids. I focus on kids these days more than anything else, young people. What we used to do was teach them a curriculum. We did it through Learning in Advance. The reframe is to empower them. through accomplishment, impact, and self-direction. We do this in schools, and we have schools and learning in advance everywhere in the world. We have old ones, we have new ones, modern ones, but all of it is learning in advance. That's really the paradigm we use. And that paradigm, as I think most of us agree, is having some problems. So a great many people in the world are attempting education reforms. Probably every country in the world is doing this. Every billionaire in the world has their own education reforms. Trouble is, they're almost all incremental changes. They're all what I call icing on top of the old learning in advance cake, which by now is stale. That's reading, writing, math, language, science, social studies. I call it the mess. And I hope we all agree here that learning in advance, not only does learning in advance no longer work well, but the future that we're going into is going to be very different. And in many of their behaviors, our kids are already very different. And that's what I started talking about with digital natives 20 years ago. So the question that I ask is, can learning in advance, even with all the icing we put on top of it, ever meet our needs and our kids' needs? Or do we need an alternative option? And I think we do. It's complicated. Obviously, you can take a picture of this slide, but I don't mean for you to read it. I'd rather you read the book. And that book talks about all these things, and it's on Amazon, and there's the URL should you want to read it. We'll find out what Kevin thought of it later. And so it's really about reframing a new way of growing up for the 21st century, from young people being almost entirely directed by adults to much more self-direction through what I call becoming empowered. And I am empowered means something very specific to me. It means I can, I choose, then I accomplish, and I see a positive impact. And if you can't do all those four, you're not empowered yet. Visually, here's a picture that I like. We used to put things into kids' heads. We spent all their early lives trying to put things in as parents, as culture, as school. Now it's important to bring things out of kids' heads so that we can get new ideas in the world, so we can see how they want to see the world. And there's a way to get there. We can get there through a process of continuous real-world projects by young people of all ages, by creating these things called empowerment hubs that I'll talk about, by providing more self-knowledge that we don't do very well, and by using what I call empotech. That's a term that I invented. EdTech is all about putting things into kids' heads. Empotech, which is empowering technology, uses the internet and YouTube and always on real-time access and AI to empower young people and all people. And this has huge benefits. We get more effective preparation of our young people by having them do hundreds of projects successfully with real-world impact. We get young people who are happier and more engaged and energized, and we get a constantly improving world because that's what young people do, unlike today. And the best part is that it works for all, that everybody in the world, no matter what their economic level or technology level, can find projects to do that they're interested in, that they want to do, that make a positive impact on the world. It's already started. It's begun in the world. It's just in pockets. There's no single jurisdiction that does it anywhere, but it needs to be cultivated and encouraged. And that's why we have stood up the Global Institute for Empowerment, Accomplishment, and Impact by Young People. It's an action-oriented R&D group. And it took me my whole life to figure out that I am best at doing R&D. So I think most of us agree we're entering a new age. And I look at it in this way. About 100,000 years ago, humans finished evolving anatomically. We were more or less the same then as we are now. But since then, we've evolved post-biology by adding new capabilities. And some people talk about the Stone Age and the Iron Age and the Bronze Age. They think of it that way. I like Will Durant's formulation of the peaks of human progress. So humans have added speech and fire and tamed animals and agriculture and social organization and morality and tools and science and writing and print. And the latest before this was education, which now is around the world. And now we're adding digital and AI, the internet, always on real-time access, connections, artificial intelligence as of a few weeks ago. And each new capability requires both reframing and recalibration. It's a different environment with a changing climate, new information, huge capabilities, online connections, new social structures. And there are new questions. What does this age of digital and AI mean for young people? That's my concern. What reframings and recalibrations will help them? What can we do to best equip today's and coming young humans for their future? Those are the questions on my mind. And the process that I use is to first reframe and then recalibrate. I don't have time to go through it all, but I'll mention the big reframings and some of the recalibrations that we need. So let's start with reframing young people's new age. A lot of people call it different things. Many call it the fourth industrial revolution. As of 2 days ago, the Anthropocene apparently officially started. There are other things. John Hagel talks about a time of fear. I think that from the young people's perspective, it's a new age of empowerment. It's something that's very different from before. Not only is the climate change coming, more information, analysis, all those things on the left, but I think we're going to see big changes in very fundamental areas, identity, privacy, property, and that is a great opportunity for young people, because a much better way for them to grow up is to find their new beliefs and unique interests and new connections, to apply them to accomplishing with positive impact, and therefore to realize their dreams. And I hope we'll get there. But to get there, we're going to need to recalibrate what young people need, what they should do, how much old versus new we offer, how much self-direction versus how much control by adults. And these days, how we get more excitement rather than the fear and anxiety that we're seeing in too many young people around the world. So let's reframe their capabilities. It used to be, we thought, and young people thought, that kids could do almost nothing that adds value until they grew up. So they needed to sit in classrooms and learn in advance. Now, young people can add real-world value with measurable positive impact starting in their earliest years. We have videos of kids doing it starting age 3. The young people are getting both new capabilities and new attitudes. And the capabilities are the technical side, the devices, the internet, the YouTube, generative AI, and not everybody has those yet. But everybody is starting to have and can have the new attitudes. And that's I can, I choose, I accomplish, I see positive impact. So that is why everybody can do this as gradually the capabilities evolve. And it means we need to recalibrate what young people think and what they can do, their and our expectations, how they spend their time, what we want and what we assess. Now, a lot of this goes back to beliefs. For a long time, it was believed that adults can, but kids can't. And that's the way we ran the world. We didn't give kids responsible jobs. Now, we're starting to see young people think, I can, I choose, and I accomplish. So we're starting to see them do much more important and powerful and impactful things at much younger ages. And I think they're changing generationally in a huge number of areas. And I formulated this list with cultural anthropologists. And these are all, you can take a picture of this as well. These are all the areas where beliefs are changing generationally. So much so that I think a generational belief divide is emerging that's more important than the digital divide. Because the digital we can provide, it will come eventually, but belief change is harder. And it's very hard when people are old. It's much easier when they're young, and it's belief change that creates a different future. If we have the same beliefs, it's likely we will have the same future. So I've thought about what some of the parts of this beliefs divide are. Again, you can take a screenshot, look at the slides later, but they're very important and they're very different. And just to give you an example, one of the 10 books that Kevin mentioned is a book for young people. Started out as beliefs for 21st century kids, morphed into digital natives rising. And here are some of the pages. A unique set of dreams and passions and strengths and capabilities. I can understand my uniqueness, apply it to bettering in the world. I have the power to create positive change. I can and will take my dreams as seriously as I want to. My goal is to become a good, effective, world-improving person. I'll make my human and technology components work well together to solve problems. So if you want to see, there are about 20 more pages to that. The book is free online at this URL. It's in multiple languages. I'm happy to translate it into any new language. And I have copies in print for purchase. If you're interested, please contact me. This means we need to recalibrate our own beliefs. How much of the new beliefs we want to accept, whether we join or whether we resist. I just saw a post today of rage against the machine. I think that's not the right way to go, but many people are choosing to go that way. But let's reframe who the young people are. A lot of people think of them as the same people that we've been for so long, but just now we have some new tools. We have AI tools, we have technology tools. I think it's much more useful to look at them as symbiotic hybrids, to look at these new things that have appeared, this new technology, as a part of us that we don't fully know how to use well, but we're learning. And I think this becoming hybrids, this hybridization, is happening very quickly. There are a lot of things in that left column that are already symbiotic. We wouldn't do most of those things without a machine. The things in the middle are absolutely on their way. There are ways to do them with our machine parts. And although the things on the right are not yet symbiotic, like loving and caring and feeling, they may move in those directions. And the big question mark, I think, is at the bottom, it's creativity. How much is creativity a hybrid function rather than just a biological human function? So I think we need to recalibrate what we keep in our heads and what we delegate to our machine parts, what we allow in terms of what machines we can have with us and how they are part of our body, how we behave with them, and the question of fear versus trust of these things. Now, there's a question about where young people live. That's a good reframe because we used to live only in Earth and only our imagination. Those were our two places to live. Now we have three places. We have Earth, imagination, and the cloud. And that's a big deal because we need to recalibrate the value of each world and especially how they interact and combine and how much time we want to spend in each of those worlds. And when we think about the future world, we have to reframe that world and the aspirations of young people, because it used to be a world of repetition. It used to be a world of generational replacement. Somebody died, somebody new got their job. It used to be a world where experience was therefore very valuable. I think we're moving to a new frontier, which requires continuous invention. And I think that means we need to recalibrate how much replacement we still need. What's the value of experience that we all have for the future? How much of that is useful? How much of that is not useful? What are useful behaviors like entrepreneurship? What are the new rules? What are the new questions to ask? What's universal? For a long time, we thought that academic success was universal. Everybody could do it. We just had to bring education to their part of the world and let them in. Well, it turns out that's not true. Not everybody is good at academics. But everybody, every person in the world, I think, is good at real world accomplishment at some level. If you ask them and you find out what they really want to accomplish, they can do it and we can help them do it. So we need to recalibrate how much real world accomplishments young people should have as they grow up. And there's lots of people who say, well, if you've done a project in college, then you become much more hireable. And so the idea of accomplishing, as Kevin said, doing, is becoming much more important in our new world. And therefore, I think we have to relabel our young people. Because when we call them kids or children or students or learners, that's a put down. That's saying we know more than them. We are better than them. They're in an earlier pre-adult stage, and that's not the same. When in reality, they're really people. And they happen to be young. And while they're not fully formed with all the experiences they'll have, they certainly have all the anatomy. And the interesting part is that they don't have the fully formed prefrontal cortex, which may in fact be a feature and not a bug. That may be something that hurts us as adults in this new environment, rather than being something that helps us in this new environment. Often today, we treat our kids as pets. It's unbelievable. We tell them, especially when they're young, sit, go here, do this, be obedient, follow me. Perform the tricks I taught you. That's what we do in school. But a lot of older kids, if you say this to high school kids, they'll agree. So we need to recalibrate how much we continue steering young people into what we want for them, and not allowing them to self-direct and go in the directions that they know are important for them, with our guidance, of course. Now we come to learning, and this is for me the key to the whole thing, because for years, for decades, for centuries, we've thought about learning as an end in itself. The academic world says that's the product of education. Education's all about learning. How much learning did you get? How can we measure that? How much learning did you forget over the summer? Those are the conversations we have. But learning is really a means for accomplishing. And it's really a useful byproduct of accomplishing, in my view. And I think we need to reframe it, because it's a huge mistake to have learning as our goal instead of accomplishing. Learning is nice, it's important, all those things, but we learn in order to accomplish useful things. So I think we need to recalibrate how much learning in advance versus how much accomplishment we do, and learning as we do, how much time we spend testing, how much learning went in, which is what we spend a lot of young people's time doing. Same with skills. We talk about basic and hard and soft and 21st century skills. We have these categories. I reframe as task specific versus transferable lifetime capabilities, which I call diamond skills. And this has been written up in a number of books by me and by others. I think about effective thinking, effective action, effective relationships, and effective accomplishment skills. And those skills are all lifelong. There are lots of them that humans have developed. You can't learn them in one shot in a course in school, but they're all very important. But we have to recalibrate not just the categories, but how much we emphasize the thinking skills versus the action, relationship, and accomplishment skills, because education has become all about thinking skills, and the other skills, equally important, are really left out of the picture. Take the basics, for example. We've fought for lots of times with reading and writing and arithmetic, and those are still important in our current world, but they're going away as basics. And my evidence for this is, if one of us moved to China, where we don't speak the language and we don't read and write the language, but we had our cell phone, we would function perfectly well. more slowly, of course, but the phone would do all the necessary translations and reading and writing that we needed in ways we could understand. So that basic is fading, but new basics are coming. And I think, among other things, there's a new loop. I call it the accomplishment or ABCD loop of accomplishing useful things, bettering your world, considering how to do it better, and then doing it over and over again. And there's lots of terms for this loop in many parts of the world. The military calls it the OODA loop. We need to build up what I call Lego. They call it a toy. I call it love, empathy, gratitude, and optimism. These are things that we don't have enough of today. We need to do what Esther Wojcicki represents, if you know her, as trick, trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness, both ways, from adults to young people to adults. And we have to be much more ready than we are for continuous change, because the era of replacement, of just getting somebody else's job when you grow up, is starting to be over. We need to reframe the curriculum, because we've done it in terms of subjects and classes offered. We have course catalogs, but what we need are 2 billion or 3 billion individual curricula of continuous real-world projects that fit each particular individual. We need to reframe parenting and being parented from the paradigm of ownership, which is really what we have. We can do everything with our kids in most cases except sell them. And some places we can do that, to curation, to thinking about our job as to curate these young people as they grow up. And so we come to reframing the viable alternative that I talked about. Right now we have schools, and that's all we have, and they are all the same. School choice is a myth, because all the schools are doing the same thing, reading and writing and math and language and science and social studies in different ways. What I proposed as not an alternative, but as an option, is empowerment hubs. They are an alternative, but not necessarily for everybody. They're for accomplishing with impact. And they can exist online or in organizations or in homes and schools, companies. They can have multiple brands. They don't have to be called empowerment hubs. 4-H does a lot of this kind of thing. Some other organizations do. They're very different. What happens in those places is very different. Again, take a screenshot or come back later to see these details. But they provide continuous self-selected real-world team projects, and we can arrange coaches for them like First Robotics does. They provide useful self-knowledge and learning as it is needed, so it becomes meaningful and, best of all, a measurable positive impact on the world. If a hub exists someplace, that part of the world keeps getting better. There where young people can go to realize their dreams, to fix problems they care about, to help others, all things we don't do in school and we don't think young people are capable of today. So we're back to our goal, which is to prepare and equip young people for their future. Today's way is years of learning in advance, but it's not working well. And the future will be different. And our kids are already very different. So the question I keep asking is, can learning in advance, even with all the icing, ever meet our needs and our kids' needs? Or do we need an alternative option? I think we do. That's why we've stood up the Global Institute for Empowerment, Accomplishment, and Impact by Young People to take action. And we'd love your involvement and help if this is something you want. Our mission is to help institutions, politicians, and parents better prepare young people for their future by helping the world create an alternative, an option to academic schools, which we call generically empowerment hubs, so that the young people can realize their dreams and fix problems they care about and help others. And that alternative is clear. It's now, I've been curating it for years, but it needs more curation and research and development, encouragement and cultivation to become a universal option for young people, just like Montessori became a universal option for kids of a certain age. As a parent, you have to consider which option you want. So we have this Global Institute for Empowerment, Accomplishment, and Impact for Young People. We've already begun. We have a website, we have partners, we have databases, we have a lot of action going on. And if you agree, if you're a person who agrees that learning in advance doesn't work well for our future kids and is at the root of the problem, it's not what we teach, it's what we do. And if you want to be part of creating a different and better for many alternative as a universal option for all young people in the world, wherever they are, and if you want to help curate and nurture the emergence of these empowerment hubs on every continent as a viable option for all young people, and not everybody does, we understand this is a subset of people. A lot of people have the old beliefs and want to do things in different ways. But if you are one of these people, we want to connect with you, and here's how to connect with me. So thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And you should put that information into the chat so that people can grab that. They'll certainly see it when they, listen to a replay, but that'll make it a little bit more permanent, a little bit more sticky for people to act on. Thank you for those remarks. I'll just comment that one of the things that I was thinking about when I was reading your book was a program years ago called Writing to Read, right? And, we teach, people to learn how to read first, and then, the writing skills, the prose, how do you write something comes later. And this was an inversion. It was, you're going to learn to read a lot better if we teach you how to write, if you do something, right? So let's go to the action component. Let's get you writing. And as a result, you're going to be able to read with pretty good comprehension. So there are clearly some inversions. I see Jemae Bliven on the call. She's about to become an author, and she's an advocate for skills versus degrees, right? So I think that's a kindred spirit, right? Thought. And we see early indications of what you're talking about, but I will say that there are, titanic forces. And I use the word Titanic, specifically because, there may be an iceberg that we run into if we keep going, but all kinds of incumbents that have existing reasons that they want to perpetuate the current way of doing things, right? So I'm kind of a both and, right, in what you're suggesting. I'm looking for the little wins that are going to allow some of this to start to manifest sooner. With perhaps something, but the Department of Education is not likely to become the Department of Accomplishment anytime soon. All right. So those are my initial reactions, but I'm happy to see what you're trying to accomplish. Jemae?
Yeah, I love everything you're trying to accomplish. I feel like for the last 20 years, I've totally done what you're trying to accomplish more with people that the traditional system didn't work for anyway. So they've already dropped out. They're already lost, right? So they're having to do these different types of school. I think the biggest problem is how long is it going to take to community colleges are folding all over the country. Traditional higher ed's folding all over the country if it's not your good schools. But our whole country is millions of jobs in Department of Ed and higher ed and traditional ed. So I just don't know how
What do you think, Mark? She's kind of echoing what
Let
I'm
me
saying. What's
react
the
to this.
transition management plan?
This is great. It's not a transition. It's an alternative side by side. I've
Okay.
talked about
Okay,
this
that's
for a
good.
very long time. I have
That's
the
good.
slides, I have the list of why it won't change, and it won't. And the only hope that we have is that if we have an alternative, people will slowly migrate in the direction that's better for
Okay.
them.
That's
And
right.
so,
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's
so-
why I recommended Warren Wilson College to you as a,
Mm.
another way of thinking about people that are, actually doing things in addition to an academic setting. But but that's it's just an alternative.
I think it's great. And I think that this can happen. It's hard for it to happen in schools because such different skills are required from the adults, but it can happen in some schools. But organizations are already doing this. 4-H and Scouts and stuff are doing parts of this.
Mhm.
There are groups like Design for Change that are doing this all over the world. This exists as something that kids are doing. And when they do it, we get the happier kids and we get the positive impacts on the world. So what's happened, what I've seen, this is just me, and I'm more or less alone, except I have partners around the world. We need to provide something that is an alternative. It may start off as after school and on the weekends, which it does in a lot of places. It may eventually make its way into there are kids who come before school. They show up at 6 a.m. to do this kind of stuff. Eventually, everybody observes that when we do this, the kids are so much happier and better off that it makes sense to go in some of those directions. Now, once we have this system in the world that is totally universal of the mess, math, language, science, social studies, it's very hard to change that system. But I've given up on incremental changes. I've given up. I'm not one of those people. I've resigned from the education reform world. I'm not one of those people who said, well, if we do this little change here, that's Bill Gates putting his billions of dollars into small schools. Whoops, that didn't work. That's all these things. It's not the kind of thing that we need. What we need is to say, wait, reframe. There's a different way to do this. It was not a way we could do in the past because we didn't have the means. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the attitudes. So the best we could do in the past was this enormous universal education system that we have. And guess what? It's coming to the end of its life as we enter a new period of humanity. That's what I think is going on. And so it is a big transition. Things don't die easily. The horse sticks around after the car comes into being, and until enough people switch over, and then we start building different infrastructures and different ways to do this. And that's what I think we need to go through for this. And what you said about, I'll just talk about what you said about writing, Kevin, because the reason that works is because typically what people write about is what they're interested in.
Right.
And when you are interested in something, reading becomes a snap, just like kids learn video games from their peers. They don't go to class to do this. Once they want to learn something, it's not that hard to learn to read, even if we still do need it, and soon we won't.
So we've got a lot of people with questions, right? Which is great. You've provoked a lot of interest here. I've got Ben. This is the order that I'm going to call him. Ben, Richard Boyd, Mike McGuire, my co-host, Jim Sporer, Amy Garmer, and Stuart Noyce. So, Ben, you're first up, buddy.
Yeah, first, and certainly I don't want to take any time. I'll comment and chat. But as Mark knows, I've mentioned before, I think we've had pieces of this all along, and we have islands in the archipelago that have existed for a long time. I never would have got into computing in the 60s were it not for Explorer Scouts and Boy Scout islands that you could find or find you that allowed a different pattern of experience outside of the institutional structure. I do want to say that Challenges are in credentialing and accreditation and assessment. And so the bulwark for the preservation of the establishment organization will fall on those elements. So you need to establish an institutional structure for new credentialing, new achievement, and new accreditation, because that's how they'll try to defend the old institutions.
And,
We could-
and can I comment on that?
Yeah, you're the guest of honor.
And it's really interesting, because those are definitely the things that academics will ask for. And no question, which is why I want to go totally around the academics, because here's what we can measure. And it's so easy. We can measure before and after. We can measure accomplishment by looking at something and saying, see that? Before our project, it was bad or it didn't exist. And now it's so much better. Look at it. And if we just got that from every young person in the world and didn't rank them and didn't put them in an institution and didn't admit them and didn't give them a degree or a certification of any kind, but we just got this accomplishment before and after, and we just saw everything getting better. I think we could do this in a whole country for a year and see the country improve. Just do projects that improve your country for a whole year. Don't rank them, don't grade them, don't assess them, don't do anything. Just see if they work. Assess them only on whether they have a measurable positive impact on the world. That's my perspective. So I can throw out all those things that you just talked about in my world and leave them in the academic world, which I don't want to be part of.
Well, let me be just one last comment, and that is, you can't just throw them away. You're going to have some element of credentialing, of record, that's a record of truth, not just say, I did this, I built a rocket ship to the moon, as students tend to put on their resume. So you've got to be careful. You can't just say, throw it away and la, 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 I'll believe anything anybody says. So they're going to have an assertion of skills for that mix, but it's not going to be your pattern of skills. It's going to be the individual's pattern of skills that they're ready to remix.
Yeah, and I mean, things have to be, if you say something, I accomplished this, it has to be true. Just like if you put on your resume today, I built a company from $0 to $1 billion, you can put that on your resume. You have to be able to back that up. But what comes out of this, rather than a transcript of accredited grades, which means very little, it is your resume, and it has to be a true resume of what you have accomplished. And if you have done hundreds of projects in the 20 years that before you become an adult, then, and you can document those projects, then you've got something that's very different from what we do today.
Yeah. So we'll go to Mike and I'm sorry, we'll go to Richard Boyd and then to Mike McGuire. Richard, join us.
Yes. So as you know, Kevin, and as Mark knows, I've been a Prensky disciple for almost 2 decades now. Whenever you first started writing about all this stuff, Mark, and you and I have talked quite a bit. And in full disclosure, Mark is on my advisory board where at Ultisim, we're trying to address this issue of how do we convey the new non-universals in a more thorough manner to students today so that they are more empowered. So I believe in, everything that you wrote in your book there, Mark, obviously. And, one of the core ideas that we're trying to implement is, some of the ideas from Neil Postman, if you guys know him. The first time I talked to Alan Kay about universals versus non-universals, he handed me a book and I was just trying to find it to flash up here, but I probably lent it to somebody. But Neil Postman's End of Education, where he talks about, in this accelerating information age, we need to have new sorts of skills, not just regurgitating facts and not just, in fact, he hated Sesame Street and so did Alan Kay. These ideas of passive media, conveying information, trying to implant information in students' heads, when what really advances non-universal concepts like equal rights and case-based thinking and scientific thinking and all that is is the question and answer element of like the Socratic method, or engaging with projects, or engaging with other people. So, my core thesis, and I know you somewhat agree with me on this, Mark, but we're trying to create these Clark Aldrich-like short sims. I believe simulations outperform any of these other media for promoting informal education. And I want to see more of that, but how do we, make sure that those simulations are, have some sort of mediating body that says, yeah, this is a really good simulation to teach this kind of person that concept, or that new non-universal, and don't have things that aren't good. So do we need an accrediting body for that, or, to Ben's point, for credentialing and that sort of thing? That's what we're trying to wrestle with now. But anyway, I know I said a lot and I could say more, but Mark, I'll just interested in your reaction.
Thank you for your support over all these years, Richard. And those are all good ideas. Here's what I hear when I listen to this: people need skills. And that's maybe true, but why do they need skills? And so I want to focus on the next step. I want to focus on the accomplishment step. So I don't care if somebody has the biggest portfolio of skills in the world. What do they do with those skills? What do they accomplish? And I'd rather have somebody who accomplishes a lot more, even if their skills are not perfect, because most of these are lifetime skills anyway. I'd rather have somebody who's actually out there playing music for people than somebody who just is practicing in their own room and getting better and better and better. So the issue, a lot of people, particularly this education world, this world that has said, we got to prepare people in advance. That's what I think has been the paradigm for all these years. We got to prepare them in advance with whether it's knowledge or whether it's skills. We've got to assess that they have them, and then we can let them out into the world to do stuff. And what happens is we spend 20 or 30 years in school, like I did, and then you get into a company, you get into a place where you have to do stuff, and you're totally helpless because you haven't done anything. And so you start at any company at the bottom. You're an intern, you're a first-year person, you have to get training, you have to get a whole new education. Why can't we have done that for the 20 years you spent growing up? Why can't we have focused on what you accomplish that's positive, and that you understand that that's what you're after? And of course that takes skills, and it takes knowledge, and it takes all these things. But those are the things that you acquire as you're trying to do this. And probably video games is a great example, because nobody would care how good you are at jumping or leaping or any of this shooting or aiming or any of this if you can't win the damn video game or do well in the video game. And so that, I think that's the biggest missing focus that I would like to bring back. And I think it takes a whole alternative way of thinking about how young people grow up.
Yep. Yeah. So we're going to go into more lightning round like questions and answers, because we have people stacked, and I want to make sure that we hear all the voices and you hear all the questions, Mark. So Mike McGuire is next. Mike, your question. You're on mute, sir. And I heard music in the last
You put
answer.
me on mute. You put us on mute. No, Mark, thank you again. This was terrific, and I'll be sending you an email. This sounds like an effort to be part of. But I think the thing, as you were speaking, I know this was aimed at kind of our generation, but besides folks like us who are, would like to see us as a species evolve and all that, how do you change? And what are the steps individuals like us or groups take to get our peers to kind of throw off some of these old ideas that you learn ahead. You learn how to part of that, right, is the way we aim children and young adults early on, right? well, you need a profession. Pick, what do you want to do? I want to be a firefighter, an astronaut, whatever. Nobody says I want to be a public relations person or any of those kind of the knowledge work that a lot of us do. What are the steps we take to get, as I said, our peers in our generation and older folks who are in positions of responsibilities to realize that needs all these changes need to happen?
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I put out the roadmap. I write my books, I give my talks, I do what I think is necessary. I've given up on trying to convince adults. What I'm not to, really, because adults very rarely change their deep held beliefs unless there's a real need. You know, they don't change when they see the light, they change when they feel the heat and what I have switched to is looking for the people who already believe these things. And that's what I want to bring together in this institute. I'm looking for somebody who thinks that way and has some money to invest to help us. But I don't think we can change many people's minds as fundamentally as we need to. So the place where we really do need to start is the young people. And we really do. And that's why I showed you the book I wrote for young people. And that's why I want to find young people who want to work on this, because if it isn't going to happen. If you've been through your whole life as an academician, you will talk about the kinds of things that Ben talked about, which is we need credentialing and we need assessment and we need all these kind of things. If you approach it from a different perspective, you may not see those same needs. That's what reframing does. It gives you new questions and new things to ask about and to be concerned about. So it's a sad reality because many people in the world are knocking their heads against the wall to try to change things. And most of them who don't give up think, oh, we just got to take some baby steps. And I've heard that from the mouths of lots of good people. But I think that they're missing the reframe.
All right, Jim Spoor and then Amy Garmer. Jim.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, thanks again for the talk and your book. And it was nice to have some one-on-one time at SRI just a couple weeks ago. So we had a great talk then. Hey, don't give up on the elderly. 2 days ago, I was at the terraces of Los Gatos. I got invited. They wanted to know what's this AI stuff all about. And 35 men, I would say 10 of them said, I have an unwritten book, I have an unwritten opera, I have an unwritten business plan. You just showed me the tool that's got me off my butt, and I'm going to get in gear again on this unfinished project. The average age was 86 years old. So don't give up on the elderly.
Well, thanks for saying that. I don't really give up. That's what I give up on is taking somebody who is deeply rooted in a particular set of beliefs and thinking that I can somehow give them a new set of beliefs. I can tell them, I can show them, I can write the books, but if they don't read that and say, yeah, that makes sense to me, that makes some sense. If they don't go there, I can't bring them there. You can, what do she say? You can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her think, right?
Oh.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And so it's a real issue. And I have only a limited amount of time and energy, as we all do. And where can we get the most bang for the buck? And if we think we can try to, as like Esther Wojcicki is a great example. If she thinks she can change the minds of all these teachers because she was so frustrated, she will become a very frustrated person, which she did. And because you won't do that, what you can do that I think is much more effective is cherry pick people who do think that way. And if you can stimulate them, Jim, like you just did, to say, oh, okay, I've been thinking that way for a while, I gave up on it, now here's a new thing I can move forward. That you want this, there's enough of us in the world who think these ways. but the majority of the world doesn't. And that's a real hard problem. It's a religious problem. It's a conversion problem, if you will.
Amy Garmer and then Stuart Noyce. Amy, please join us.
Thanks, Kevin. Mark, this is great. I've just become an acolyte, so I'm signing on with the others. I think Richard had said he's been following your work for a long time. As Kevin knows, I've done a lot of work in my past with public libraries and with libraries as institutions out in the community that have desperately needed to evolve to accommodate the future that you're describing. And you know, they are really interesting places where they are letting their people and their spaces and their platforms, when they're opening those up to the kind of learning that I think you're talking about. I think it's baby steps for them. I'm wondering if have any thoughts on some of the places you mentioned. There's scouting and 4-H, and I think a lot of the organizations I heard mentioned tend to have a downward trajectory on participation rates now, and obviously they need to be replaced. They are being replaced, but where do you see out in the communities that you're working in the constellation or concentration of some of the people and resources that can really help to kickstart this more? Or do you think it's really something that needs to be invented anew?
I think it needs to be named. That's as an alternative. I think that's the key thing. It is invented. I've been curating it for years. I've been finding it in pockets for years. And libraries are a great place. Another place that would be great would be companies. Companies can start their own empowerment hubs for their own employees, children, or for anyone else. These things really start up, but they don't have a name. There's no way to say you can either have the academic education or you can have this empowerment education, whatever. And we still struggle for a name and a definition. And that's really my quest. That's really, if we can just say, look, this exists, here's how it exists, here's what you do. I have a book, I'll send you the book, it's online, Empowerment Today. It's all about creating empowerment hubs. It's how to do it. We know how to do this kind of stuff. The uptake is slow, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it happen and contact all these people who in their heart want to do this stuff and have no idea of how to name it, or they come up against the education wall and they get stymied. There's so many barriers in the way. But I think, and again, my hero is Maria Montessori. Somehow she pushed through and was able to make her thing into a viable alternative. And that to me is extraordinary. And I'd like to hopefully do something similar.
Very good. Amy, thanks for that question. Mark, our next person is Stuart Noyce, and then we'll be a little bit in overtime, folks. For those of you who have the opportunity to stay to finish up the Q&A, great. If not, thank you for being with us. Stuart, your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So the idea of empowerment and accomplishment is something that we practice with our own children. We live in just north of San Francisco, and we're surrounded by opportunities here that we're considered to be just enrichment programs, right? We didn't think of them as empowerment opportunities. We just thought of them as enrichment. And we said, let's go find something for our kids to do. They would find them like filmmaking or working in an academic setting where there was a lot of action. Whatever it was, they thrived in it, right? And they have become their own people as a result. And I want to suggest that what you're doing is absolutely critical. I would be a backer anytime. And I would just give you one suggestion, and that is, if it's possible, can you get people to sign up on your, whether it be eainstitute.org website or some other website that you can come up with, and say, hey, show us what you're doing. Tell us what you're doing. Give a link so that people near you can go and take advantage of it. I think that's something super actionable you could do, Mark, that would really accelerate this, and it's a necessary step.
Thank you, Stuart, for all the comments. I agree, and I've been trying to build this list for a very long time. It turns out you have to pull stuff out of people. They don't go up there and offer it. But somebody, when COVID started, a friend in Mexico called me up and said, "What do I do with my kid?" And I said, "Well, just ask her what she wants to do and you know how she can help." And her mother was smart enough to give her a blank piece of paper. This girl figured out a project. A year later, she's on the cover, the front page, above the fold of the biggest newspaper in Mexico for what she did. And this is the kids. You're absolutely right. You're a great testimonial. Kids thrive on this stuff. And if we read The Boy Who Captured the Wind in Africa, it's not just people in Silicon Valley. It's the kids, anybody who says, "I can accomplish something. I can do this. I choose to do it. I accomplish something. And look at this, the lights are on in my little village." So this is, to me, and maybe it's just that I see this earlier on than some, like I saw digital natives, I see the kids as really being much more capable, being much more wanting to do these things, and us just not giving them the opportunities for lots of good historical reasons. But the history is history, and the future is what we need to create.
Very good. So the last person that I had actually had to leave, Kyle Shannon. So let me just ask, do you have any framing thoughts that you want to leave us with, Mark? And, you know, you had an ask. I heard that you want people who are like-minded to join, you know, your new EAI initiative. You also, see, I already made it an acronym, the occupational hazard, right? And
That is our acronym.
yeah, well, I understand, but I'm just saying that people won't know what it is yet, so we need to, you know, say what it is right before we make it an acronym. With that said, and you're looking for funding, right, to support, you know, the work, right? I have some thoughts incubating, but I'll take that offline. What would you both ask for, and what would you say is the elevator speech, right? If you had to say in 60 seconds, all right, that's all the time you had, what's the elevator speech, right, for what you're trying to bring into the world?
Yes, those are great questions. We are looking for people who want to invest in this stuff, and the elevator pitch is we are looking for an alternative way of growing up to learning in advance in schools, to sitting in lots of spending 6 or 12 or 20 years learning in advance in schools before you accomplish anything. We believe that young people can accomplish starting at very young ages. We have a system that has emerged in the world for doing this, and we want to promote that system in the world through more research and development and promotion and contacts and connections. So if you are a person who believes in this kind of thing and you want to help us, we would love to talk with you and see how we can work together.
Fantastic. Mark, we really appreciate you being with us. We are, what you're suggesting, what you're trying to bring into existence is valuable. All right. So I'll continue to, to be in touch and lend support. So what I want to do now is I want to just let you know what's coming up next, right? If you like Mark, all right, we have some more people that are, equally thoughtful.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah. But the Rob O'Regan will be with us next week talking about digital maturity index, all right, from Foundry, which is a new part of IDC. We'll have an open mic on the July 27th. Then Mike Wing will be with us talking about organizational digital democracy. And then Chris Shipley, the co-author of The Empathy Advantage, all right, will join us. So there's more, but it's a great lineup. Mike, any concluding comments before we wrap this up today?
No, this was very inspiring. And I'm glad everybody could join. Mark, thank you again for the time, and just sent you an email. I think you're probably going to get more than a few of those from this call.
It's my pleasure. Please connect me to anyone you know who think might enjoy hearing the story. And I hope to connect with all of you collectively and individually in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all of your transferable lifetime capabilities, Mark. You're a good man. Empowered, Mark Prensky. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Take care.